I'll get things started here. Let me kick off with the virtual meeting preamble during COVID-19 emergency. Good evening. As the chair of the HDC, I'm declaring the HDC for the town of Exeter, New Hampshire. I'm declaring that an emergency exists, and I'm invoking the provisions of RSA 91-A:2-3B. Federal, state, and local officials have determined that gatherings of 10 or more people pose a substantial risk to our community in its continuing efforts to combat the spread of COVID-19. In concurring with their determination, I also find that this meeting is imperative to continue the operation of the town government and services, which are vital to the public safety and the confidence during this emergency. As such, this meeting will be conducted without a quorum of the physical body present in the same location. At this time, I also welcome members of the public accessing this meeting remotely. Even though this meeting is being conducted in a unique manner under unusual circumstances, the usual rules of conduct and decorum apply. So please keep yourselves on mute during the virtual meeting, and unless you're called upon. And then we're going to start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance of each of the members. So I will call your name, and please state your name and whether there's anyone in the room with you during the meeting. Before I do that, I should say that the date is Thursday, August 6th, 2020. It's approximately 7 p.m. And we are going to be talking about under new business and public hearings, a request from the Ioka Properties LLC seeking clarification of the certificate of appropriateness that was issued at the July 16th meeting 2020 for the improvements to the existing structure located at 53 Water Street. Subject property is located in the WC Waterfront Commercial District, and it is case number 20-3. So I will call for roll call. Douglas?
Doug McCallum. I'm here in my house all by myself.
All right, thank you. Julie Gilman?
Hi, I'm the select board representative. I am in my house, in my office, and I am alone.
Great, thank you. Grayson Shepherd is our newest member. Grayson, nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Hey, everyone. Wish I could meet everyone actually in person, but Grayson Shepherd, I'm here in a family member's home, and I am alone.
Okay, great. Thank you. Pam?
I'm Jerem. I am here in my house alone.
Okay, thank you. Gwen?
Gwen English, planning board rep, and I am in the room by myself. And welcome, Grayson. Nice to meet you.
And is Curtis out there? I don't specifically see your name, but I want to make sure I call out to see if you are with us. Okay, hearing nothing. I think Curtis had another engagement for tonight. So with that, I would like to open up the public hearing to legal counsel Sharon Summers, I believe, as a representative for the application. Please go ahead, Sharon.
Okay. I think I should be off mute now.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We are here tonight, as you said, to seek clarification of the commission's order from July 16th. As was indicated in our letter to you of July 30th, and supported by two things. One was the July 21st letter from JSN, and then also there was another letter today to me on August 4th from JSN. We are here tonight to seek permission to temporarily remove the marquee for all of the reasons cited in our July 30th letter. Which include both safety issues and include issues pertaining to the construction and renovation of the building. As is indicated in our letter, which I'm not going to go into in detail, we believe that the proposed duration, which is I know of concern to both the selectmen and I believe the commission, the duration of the removal, if this is approved, would be during the duration of the appeal process. We will be taking the HDC decision up on appeal to the ZBA. And depending upon the outcome of that, there could be a fairly lengthy period of time which would follow that for any subsequent appeals that would be going through the court system. Our proposal is to remove the sign temporarily and store it safely off-site during the entirety of the appeal process, as well as during the subsequent construction process, whenever that gets concluded. And then we would then restore that. If we are not successful in our appeal efforts, we would restore it to the building prior to receipt of a certificate of occupancy for the building. So with that, that's essentially the essence of our request. I don't know if the commission has had an opportunity to receive or review the August 4th letter from Jeff Naraki, which was provided to the commission today. But essentially that letter simply indicates that from the engineer's perspective, that he believed strongly that it would make the most sense to remove the sign temporarily and for a number of reasons, including the fact that it would make sense so that any possible improvements could be worked on off-site. So with that, if the commission has any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer that. But if not, what I'd like to do at this point is to turn to the letter that was provided by Laurie Couture and just walk through each and every one of those points to provide some context. So in that letter, there's an objection to granting the temporary removal of the marquee. And the first item that's cited is the reference to the previous correspondence from the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance and the Division of Historic Resources, which the letter says speaks to the importance of repairing structures and not altering structures unnecessarily while repairing them. The comment that I would make in response to that is that those two letters that were previously supplied to the commission did not provide or did not address scenarios in which safety is concerned. And moreover, I read the letters again carefully today, and they don't address anything about altering structures unnecessarily while repairing them. The second paragraph asks whether or not JSN Associates physically inspected and assessed the marquee on site, and has Exeter Building Inspector Doug Eastman declared the marquee a hazard to the public. I will tell you that last Friday, a week from tomorrow, Jeff Naraki of JSN was in fact on site. He was also on site prior to his July 21st letter and did in fact inspect. Doug Eastman was also present at that site walk. And I'm not going to presume to speak on behalf of Doug Eastman, but certainly the commission can ask him directly what his opinion is of this. But he was there and was there to witness the inspection and the conclusions of the structural engineer. The third point is that the removal of the marquee for legitimate safety concerns isn't necessary because the sidewalk and parking area can be blocked off. The problem with that allegation, however, is that it's really not practical given the period of time that we're talking about. If this is temporarily removed and we pursue, which we will pursue, the appeal to the ZBA and possibly thereafter, there could be a very lengthy period of time which will follow for the court appeals. This is going to be going to the ZBA and then possibly a motion to rehear presented to the ZBA. There's going to need to be action following that. And following the ZBA's conclusion of their work, then it would go to most likely to the Rockingham County Superior Court, possibly even to the New Hampshire Supreme Court after that. So I certainly would hope that nowhere near that amount of time is going to take place, but I think that the commission and really the residents need to be cognizant that while it's on the face of it seemingly plausible to say that the sidewalk can be blocked off, it's simply not practical given the period of time which will ensue in the event of appeals. The fourth paragraph talks about support beams that could be scaffolding and support beams that could be used to reinforce and stabilize the marquee. Again, on the face of it, that's certainly true. However, given the time period in which it's going to take for the appeals to unfold, it's simply not practical to expect that for a period of months that scaffolding and support beams are going to be holding this sign up. The fifth item that was raised is that it was suggested that a load test could be performed by an independent structural engineer to determine if snow load will compromise the marquee's safety. I guess what I would respond to that is that Jeff Naraki of JSN is a very reputable local structural engineer. He has been around for 30 years. I personally know him. He is very experienced, and I would believe that the Commission can absolutely rely on his opinion without the need to embark on getting an independent structural engineer. And in addition to that, his conclusions are not based solely on the snow load. So I think this is an unnecessary request, and I would urge the Commission to not proceed with it. The sixth point is to suggest that a protective covering could be outfitted or built around the marquee to protect it during construction. That, I suppose, could be possible. I would let the construction team, specifically my clients, Jay and David, speak to that. But even if that were to be the case, it doesn't address all the other issues which we have raised in our letter, which justify the temporary removal of the sign. The next point is paragraph 7, which references Portsmouth Sign and some communication that was provided to Laurie Couture on July 27th. And the response that I would give to that is that it's really not relevant. First of all, Portsmouth Sign Company will not be doing any work on our site. Further, the email included provides no commentary about the concerns about how the removal would impact the marquee and the building, contrary to what's claimed in the letter. And even if such concerns had been expressed in the letter from Laurie Couture or from Carrie Vaughn, we don't have any evidence that Portsmouth Signs has such expertise to talk about the impact to the building. The Portsmouth Sign Company, to the best of our understanding, has no licensed engineers or architects. And in fact, Carrie Vaughn, who wrote the email, is in sales and has a BA in, I believe it's fine arts, but certainly nothing in the way of architecture or engineering, which would render her having the necessary expertise to render such an opinion. So I just don't think it's of any particular relevance to the Commission this evening. With regard to paragraph number 8, which says that the lean or pitch of the marquee can be seen in earlier photos from at least 1990 and 1994. What I would say to that is that the JSN letter of July 21st contains a photo number 1 in particular, that shows a side view, and that photo does show that the upper portion of the sign is pulled and tilted outward, some from the wall. In addition to this, David Cowie advises that he believes that the drain for the marquee is on the inner side, in other words, closer to the wall, so water accumulates more on the outer edge before reaching a level where it can drain, resulting in more weight and further drain. So I think the bottom line is that the response to this paragraph 8 is that the lean is indicative of a safety problem, as is evidenced by JSN letter. With regard to paragraph number 9, as we have indicated in our letter, if, in fact, as part of the removal of the sign, there's any scarring of the building, we will repair that. And then second of all, if there's a question that's raised about a steel bar or rod and how the two structures are going to be separated, I'm advised by my client that this would be done safely for purposes of maintaining the integrity of the sign after it's removed by the use of a cold or hot cut attaching the metal bars, and that would be done as needed to properly remove the sign. So in short, efforts will be made to ensure that the sign is properly removed without damaging it, and also to the extent that the building might be scarred in the process, we would be repairing that regardless of what the outcome of any appeal is. Next, with regard to number 10, I think the answer to that is quite simple. As we've indicated, if we do not prevail in our efforts to appeal the decision of the HDC, the intent would be to, at this time, to proceed with the construction of the building and to then reinstall the sign as part of that construction. At the end of that construction, as we say in our letter, we will reinstall the sign, and the compliance of that requirement is guaranteed, because without us doing that, we don't get our certificate of occupancy, which I think it's safe to say that we will work very, very hard to get that certificate of occupancy. Finally, with regard to paragraph number 11, it's an expression of doubt, I guess, as to whether or not we, following any temporary removal, we do intend to reinstall it. I guess what I would say to this is that we do intend to reinstall it if we don't prevail. And if we do prevail and there's some damage to the building, then we will fix the building. The comments, and I want to put this in context, we did indicate in earlier meetings before the HDC that we had concerns about the safety of the sign, and it became apparent to us, perhaps belatedly, but it did become apparent to us that it was really necessary to engage in getting some expert opinion from a structural engineer as to the safety of the building. We did that as quickly as possible, and that resulted in the July 21st letter from Jeff Naraki. Regardless of the timing of it, I think is critical for both we as owners, myself as counsel, and for the commission and the town to have the benefit of this expert opinion that's been rendered, and to try to act appropriately following on that. So I don't think that the concern that's expressed about temporarily removal and some conclusions that means that it's not going to be installed afterwards, I think those are misplaced. Because if we don't prevail, then the marquee is going to be going back up, and the proof of having that happen is that we won't get our certificate of occupancy unless it happens. So with that, I'd be happy to answer, and I know I have the architects are here, as are my clients, and we'd be happy to answer any questions which the commission may have.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. I think I could speak for all the members that we'd like to hear from Doug at some point, having been present during that meeting, most recent meeting with JSN. But prior to that, you were just claimed that in previous HDC meetings that you had raised a concern about the safety of the marquee. I don't remember those being raised in the previous meetings until I had actually talked about a clarification in our guidelines, which says that the marquee does not pose any immediate threat to the public. And in saying that, the letter from JSN was then preceding that. It came after I had said that. What was interesting was it's as a pretty prominent place in town. You're driving by it every day. The date that letter was issued to the select board, talking about it being a threat to the public, your client's own crew were in the shade directly underneath that marquee in protecting themselves from the hot sun that day. If it had been an immediate threat to the public, I would think that wouldn't have happened. So I just want to bring clarity to the irony of where that letter came from as an immediate threat to the public seemed to be post after we said it was not, and that was therefore grounds for not removing it. That I wanted to say. I also wanted to ask, what is the load of the turnbuckle? What is the rating of the turnbuckle that's currently holding the sign up?
I don't know the answer to that.
Does JSN know that?
They may. He is not present here tonight. He's on vacation.
So if I could share my screen. Here is the picture inside the marquee. The connection of the chain to the marquee is a turnbuckle. And that turnbuckle's going to have a rating. It's making me concerned that JSN, I'm not doubting JSN's professional credentials at all, because in fact, as an architect, I've asked them for quotes in the past before. But to not have any information about this connection being the primary connection, it's a little bit boggling to me. That has got to have a load rating on it.
Well, it may, Mr. Warden. I just don't happen to know what it is. I mean, okay. My suspicion is that he probably knows, but he's not here tonight, and I don't know myself.
Okay. I can stop sharing now. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, if I could, you talked about the lean of the marquee being not near the drain. The business I happen to be in now is stormwater design, civil and stormwater design. So I knew a little bit about drainage and sediment collection. The area that you see is my screen being shared? Can you see this? Can everyone see the picture that's up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the inside again of the marquee. You can see the sediment that's collecting along, which is the area the drain for the sign is in the corner over here on the right-hand side. There is a positive pitch to that drain because that's where the sediment is collecting. So, and you can see by the discoloration also above there that if there is any water pooling, it is subsequent to where that drain location is. So I don't think that there's an issue in terms of pitch of the marquee currently, and the drainage on the inside of the marquee would have been designed to pitch to that drain no matter what orientation it was in. So I just wanted to bring clarity to that also for the other board members. Should be able to stop sharing this now. Okay. So of those two things, the other thing I want to bring to the commission is that what we're being asked to do tonight is to bring a clarification to our judgment, which was that the removal of the marquee from the building as the only element of the application was not historically appropriate. So to make a reversal of that decision tonight, or to make a conditional approval allowing it to be temporarily removed, that's what we're being asked or being called on to do tonight. We've made conditional approvals in the past, and it has never worked in our favor. We've been burned before, so I just want to take all caution in terms of understanding exactly what's being requested and subsequently what is going to be the result if we are making a motion to reverse our decision on the removal of the marquee. Whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent. I understand that it's being asked to be temporary right now as it goes through the appeal process. And I understand that. But my question is, if the construction is to proceed, I know there's going to be construction above the public right-of-way already. It's going to have to be protected in some way. I assume that when the masonry work is done, when there's demolition going on, when there's precast lintels that are being raised above, and masonry work being completed, that right of way is going to be protected from the public. So why wouldn't the marquee be protected below as well? At that point, I think I'd like to ask for Doug Eastman's thoughts about his meeting with JSN on site recently.
I'm sorry, Patrick.
And I guess more specifically, Doug. Yeah.
You're not coming in. You're freezing and unfreezing.
Okay.
Okay. Try it again. Go ahead.
Ever since that storm, my internet has. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can. Yep.
Okay. I'd like to ask for your comment on the recent site meeting with JSN, and if you feel that the marquee right now is posing an immediate threat to the public.
The meeting. Can you hear me, Patrick? You're frozen again.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was at the meeting. My recommendation was basically to get a report from JSN that was a little bit more detailed than what was previously given to us or to me. This was basically something that I do have some concerns about that now. After Mr. Milwaukee looked at it on that day, he did some checking around. At that point, he did not give his opinion. So I just asked him at that point to give us something. I needed something. I could not make that decision on my own. I needed a professional engineer to look at that. I think this kind of puts it in a nutshell, in my opinion, that it's unpredictable because nobody knows at this point. I would never say, oh, that's going to be fine.
Right.
I just would never do that. But I think it is unpredictable. It's old. And with what's going on with the building, all the construction that's going to be happening there, it would be my opinion to remove the sign temporarily. This is just my opinion, that to protect the sign from being damaged in any way. I really think it needs to come off so that we can see what is holding the sign on and how it's been secured. I really think that's critical. I think getting in behind that and finding out, and if when it does get reinstalled, it will meet the current codes. So
Doug, was that in that site investigation with JSN? Was that not available? The connection of the marquee to the building, other than the chain. I think I understand that the marquee itself is hollow, and it has a metal structure inside of it.
Yeah.
Was it not part of that site walk that you did? Did you not look inside of it and how that may connect to the building?
No, I did not look inside the marquee. There was no way of determining, in my opinion, how it was attached to the building. There was no way of telling. The only thing that I saw from inside the building was the chain connection to the inside with a flat piece. I'm sorry, it wasn't a flat piece. It was a piece of channel iron, about maybe 20 inches, 24 inches long, with a nut attached to that. That's the only thing that I saw that was holding the marquee up. But and I'm sure there has to be something either attached on the outside that it's hanging on. But yeah, I do have some concerns after, talking with Jeff and reading his analysis. But especially during construction, things get vibrated. I think it would be advisable to have it come off just to see. We don't know if the boards are rotting behind that or the steel is rotted behind it. We don't even know how it's attached. So I would be very curious to see how it is been attached to the building. Whether they just pull it off and slide it back on, I don't know.
Well, so I assume that the process of removal of that is going to have to be to take the tension off of that chain. If that's the primary anchorage, and if that's what's holding it against the building or onto the building.
I'm not sure that's the primary. I would say that was supplemental to the primary. I mean, once again, I'm not an engineer. Only from what I can see, it doesn't seem to be like it seems like there is some stress on that cable. I'm sorry, the chain, as there is some fracturing of the header above the window. Didn't look like it's fairly recent, but when you see fracturing of whatever that sandstone, is that what it is, Patrick? I don't know if it's granite, sandstone, or whatever, but
I don't know specifically. I do know that it's a veneer and it's not a monolithic piece that is the thickness of the wall. It's you can see from the jam that it's about the thickness of a brick. So I think it's about 2.5 inches wide. So
I mean, yeah, I do have some concerns. Once again, do I think it's going to fall down tonight or tomorrow morning? Probably not, but I don't know that.
Right.
I would say I would use the term that Jeff used, and that is unpredictable, especially with all that's going on over there.
Okay.
All the interior demolition, which the commission, some of the commission members certainly have seen the inside, and we know that the way it was built inside may be holding up some of the walls. They may be, weakened at some point. I don't know, but I do have some concerns about it.
Okay. So I'm gonna assume that to remove the marquee, it's gonna have to be lifted from below vertically in some way or supported somehow vertically, to either take the tension off that chain so that turnbuckle can be undone, or to lift it off a ledger that it might be balancing on as a moment connection at the bottom of the marquee. All of those would be subsequent to some type of bracing below that then is creating a vertical force up, unless you're using machinery or something like that to do that. Yeah. And I guess the question is, are we as the commission being asked to change our make a conditional motion or change what our ruling was to temporarily allow it to be removed when the intention and really what's being sought after is the complete removal of it, period? And subsequently, that's what's going to be followed in the approval or the appeal process. Instead of temporarily bracing it right now and leaving it in place as it is and going through your appeal process. That way, the public is protected. Our ruling stands as is and does not need to be modified, and you still continue to be able to go through your approval process.
Patrick, this is David Cowie.
Sure. Go ahead.
Obviously, the temporary removal is going to allow us to achieve all the points that Sharon had gone over with our letter to the board.
Yep.
If the marquee stays in place, it's just going to be very cumbersome to work around it and very costly to work around it.
Right.
Temporary removal is also going to allow us to thoroughly evaluate both the building and the marquee more thoroughly. I would say that and Doug can weigh in on this as well, but the fact that there's no further supports inside the building would lead you to believe that the marquee is very flimsily held to the building. There's nothing penetrating through the building to suggest that is a solid attachment to the building.
Okay. So what would be your process of removal then?
We'd probably rig it and bring in a crane and just lift it off in place, or lift it off its position.
Okay. And I think that I know that some of the concern is that it will be marred, or it may, in terms of its structural integrity, if it's challenged inside, that it may be racked or broken.
I think the concern that Laurie brought up, I think she was of the belief, having spoken to somebody, I'm not sure who that was, that there was already markings on this side of the building, and that removing the marquee was going to expose those markings. Mm-hmm. So our point was, even although if that is the case, when we remove the marquee, then we repair those scarrings anyway.
Right. Okay.
The points of the turnbuckle, Patrick.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not quite sure what the relevance of the turnbuckle would be, because it's only as strong as its weakest link. And to me, the weakest link is the penetration through the building where it's starting to fracture.
Okay. The reason I ask specifically about that was it's more of a clarification of the thorough investigation that JSN has done. And also, if that in their previous letter, they said that it's likely a 6,000 pound load or a 400 or 4,500 pound load on that chain. So it would it'd lead you to believe that that turnbuckle's got to be appropriately sized, or the load is a lot less. If that is the primary connection right now, the loading of that turnbuckle is going to tell you, because if it wasn't loaded for it, it would have failed already. So that was more in terms of bringing the clarity to that. But I think I've spoken enough at this point. I'm going to ask the other commission members.
I'd like to, if I could, just comment on the where you had mentioned the buildup. It's quite obvious there's quite a bit of sediment buildup right around the point of that chain attached to the marquee. So that would lead you to believe there is buildup at that point, the furthest out point of the marquee. Yeah,
and it's not clear under that sediment what the connection to the actual marquee is. Is there a ring also there, or is it it appears to be buried under that bit of sediment?
No, but I was just saying, my point being that there's obviously some buildup there, so water is collecting there and it's leaving that sediment. Okay. It is putting further weight on the end of the point of that, the apex of the sign.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay. I'm going to open it up to Doug. Doug, go ahead. I'd like to hear your questions, comments.
I think this is a completely reasonable request in light of new input from a structural engineer. I think that we're getting beyond our purview, getting involved in means and methods of construction. When I voted to retain the sign, I always assumed that you would have to remove the sign in order to restore it. I would put a condition on our resolution that it be stored in a enclosed safe space, and maybe during the period when this arbitration or education is going on, the Marquee Preservation Committee could start trying to raise some funds to preserve it, to restore it. I think our resolution did not address the restoration of the sign. We just said it had to stay on the building. And I certainly did not intend it to mean that it had to literally stay on the building during the process of construction. That is crazy. And the second guessing of engineers, I'm an architect. I have 40 years of experience. I've worked with all kinds of construction, and I don't second guess my engineers, and I certainly don't try and pick them apart. And when a structural engineer tells me something may be dangerous, I don't say, well, probably not. I've had enough experiences where I've designed buildings that contractors have told me are over-engineered, and then it turns out there's an earthquake and they've survived the earthquake, whereas their neighboring buildings didn't. I think I've said enough, but I think it's a completely reasonable request. I think there should be conditions, and I don't think we should get into the nitty-gritty of means and methods of construction, because I don't believe that's our purview. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So, Doug, just as clarification to our certificate of appropriateness, it was for saying that the demolition of that historic element on the building was not significantly appropriate.
Right. But it's not saying how we didn't say that they couldn't take it off the building to restore it. I just assumed they would. Because if you were going to do a good restoration, it would be best done in a shop where people could work under cover. You could use good equipment. You could have a good paint job. I mean, it's essentially the same as, in my mind, restoring an old car. You wouldn't do that on the top of a sidewalk, on top of a scaffold. It's just crazy. It's completely reasonable. Their request is completely reasonable, and I can't believe that we're trying to nitpick it. So I think I've said too much.
Okay, thank you. Julie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to be clear on the process that what we're doing here is further clarifying a vote that was unclear about because of the process of restoring a building. I completely agree with Doug that the retention of the marquee was the aim of that motion, because I made the motion. Excuse me. But I also understand the complexity of leaving that in place while doing the construction and further demolition necessary to finish the project as it was presented. I use it as an example. I leave a glass of wine on the counter and I reach into the cupboard above me and knock the glass of wine off with my elbow. And you can just imagine that happening with the letters on the Ioka being damaged in some way because of what has to happen above it. So I'm comfortable with this request that the marquee be temporarily removed. I agree with Doug that it's not in our jurisdiction to tell the owner how to do that. That's part of their construction process. It's part of their construction timing. To make it go smoothly, really, with their request is quite reasonable. Just for process purposes, I want to understand that we have done this before where we have made a conditional approval or approval with conditions, and an applicant has come back to clarify the conditions of whether they can substitute something or not, for example, not as a part of the process to go to the ZBA. So I just would like to understand fully, and this is a question perhaps for Attorney Summers, if we decide here and make a motion and approve the temporary removal of the sign during the construction period or a period of time, would this project still continue to the ZBA?
Yes, because what we would be appealing would be the decision of the HDC to require, in your words, that the marquee be retained on the building as part of our overall construction. So that would be the issue that we would be appealing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. I have to agree. I agree with Doug that I also, having experience in architecture and construction, that I wanted it retained. If you look at the Secretary of the Interior standards, this is precisely a condition that they outline as a process for retaining a historical feature or historical resource that's important to the historic district that it's in, to the building that it's in. So this is a process that is generally accepted practice, I would say, because we do follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for these things. So I think that I have nothing further at this time. I appreciate the due diligence that the owner and the and crew have done to look at the sign, to get that engineering report, which I thought was very helpful. And for right now, that's what I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Pam, Jedem?
Well, I have, everything has been said. I thoroughly agree with Doug and Julie, and if a construction engineer tells me that something is dangerous, then I just accept that, yes, it is dangerous. So I think this is thoroughly reasonable.
So to clarify that, and Doug, to clarify what you're saying in terms of nitpicking an engineer, I'm not nitpicking an engineer, but I want to bring complete clarity to what we're evaluating at this time, and make sure that we have all of the information in front of us to render a decision. So that said, it's not adversarial towards a professional engineer in any way, other than let's make sure we have all of the information, and that's my charge as the chair of this board, to make sure that the members around me, because I am not a voting party, if we have a quorum without my vote, that we all have the information that we need to render a decision.
Okay, please forgive my use of the word nitpicking.
All right, go ahead, Gwen.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm not an engineer and I'm not an architect, so I come at this from a very different viewpoint from the rest of you. And I certainly appreciate Doug's and everyone else's concerns about safety, and certainly that should be paramount. I guess coming into this before hearing everybody talk, I was hoping that there would be a way where perhaps scaffolding or some other structure could be put in place around the marquee, maybe allowing the marquee to be moved away from the building enough so that the work could continue. And obviously there would have to be a cover over the marquee just to protect it from all the construction that's going to be taking place on the facade. But I hear what all of you are saying, and I certainly can't argue against any of the points that have been made by the engineers. The only thing that I would offer, and I don't know what the rest of the board members would think, but it seems that one component that is missing from the discussion is the involvement of a sign person in this process. And it just seems like it would be wise to work in concert with somebody who is a professional, someone who would maybe someone who you have talked to, who you're considering hiring to repair this sign, because the moving of the sign, the dismantling of the sign will probably come with some issues that we're not aware of, and I would just like to see this be an event that includes everybody. It's all encompassing. And I don't know, I'm aware of the fact that the Portsmouth Sign Company did the Yokin sign. I believe they may have done a Strand Theater sign and a few others. So they're not inexperienced. I don't know what their involvement has been to date with this particular marquee, but whether it's them or whether it's somebody else, I just think it would be helpful, and it would certainly comfort me and put my mind to rest knowing that someone who is a sign maker and is an expert at this has been consulted. And I think that's all I have.
I can maybe address that for you in terms of the sign. We have hired Bridge Road Sign Company. And the name of it again,
I'm sorry.
We have hired Bridge Road Sign Company. They were out of Newbury, Massachusetts. And he's got many, many years of experience. He's been in sign work for all of his life. And he actually helped us remove the small marquee, the mini marquee that was inside the building. So he was professionally engaged to help us remove that and to take that off premises and store that safely.
Great, thank you. And our newest member, Grayson Shepherd. Go ahead, Grayson.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, I understand I have not been as intimately involved in this process as everyone else. I think Mr. Cowie has somewhat addressed this, but my question, or kind of what I'm trying to figure out, is as far as the timing of the removal, I understand that the current request is to do it in the immediate future while this appeal process is pending. So I guess my question is kind of, what is the purpose, aside from just getting it over with, is there in removing it while this issue is pending versus doing it once there's been a resolution of the appeals process? What are the costs and the benefits that I'm looking for?
Not having to do it twice. We can remove it in one step and have it brought to a secure premises where we can fully evaluate the sign and people can work on the sign much easier. And their evaluation and any repairs that would be necessary, or any restoration, and the same for the outside of the building.
If I could add to that as well, part of it, the desire to remove it now goes back to the comments that Doug Eastman made before, and that are also raised in Jeff Naraki's letter, which is that there's an element of unpredictability about this whole thing, so that for purposes of safety, it makes sense. In addition to all the construction factors that David just mentioned, it also makes sense, given the fact that you have an unpredictable situation, to take that sign off temporarily as quickly as possible to avoid any kind of an accident.
Okay.
I think that's the only question. Yeah, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Okay. So at this time, we've heard from all present commission members, and so I will ask, does the ownership or legal counsel want to say anything else before we open it up to public comment?
I don't think so at this time. We certainly would be looking to be able to respond to any comments if that's appropriate, and would also raise my continuing concerns and objections to non-residents speaking. But other than that, I don't think we have anything else to add at this time.
Okay, thank you. So looking at attendees, we do have 5 hands raised right now. So I am going to call on the hands raised. Can you please state your name and your current residency? And if it is not in Exeter, then we as a commission have to vote to allow you to speak tonight on behalf of the Marquee. On behalf of, I shouldn't say on behalf of the Marquee, on behalf of the request for clarification of the certificate of appropriateness. So first off is Michael Maslowski.
Here I am.
Go ahead, Michael. Please state your name, residence, and why you'd like to speak tonight.
Michael Mezlowski. My residency now is in Tampa, Florida. I was allowed to speak at the last meeting, and I am a former resident of Exeter for 30 years.
Okay. Commission members, by roll call, I'll ask if Mr. Maslowski is allowed to speak tonight. Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
All right. Michael, go. Please proceed.
Okay, I'm going to keep all my comments to the structure of the building. Goes by the letter SN. If you would go to photo 3, please. Do you see the plate up against the building and what appears to be an eye bolt going through the building? Can you see that?
Hold on a second, Michael. We don't have a screen shared to show that.
I got you.
Is this an exterior picture or an interior picture?
It's going to be both, the exterior and then the interior.
Okay, so this is the exterior.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead.
Okay, if you look at that, you see what appears to be stress cracks. correct? I don't think anybody's going to doubt that. But the attachment through the building was through a huge eye bolt. You see that? It's not a chain. It's not a turnbuckle. It's an eye bolt that went through a plate. It was welded to the plate. Can you all make that out?
Yes.
And there was no attachment of the plate itself.
Patrick, you're only sharing your file Explorer. We don't see the photo full screen.
Okay, thank you. 1 second, please. How about now?
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Perfect. If you look at the eye bolt, it's actually an eye bolt, not a turnbuckle or anything else. It was welded to that plate. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
There's a lot of weldment. But that plate is not attached to the building on the outside. Can we all agree on that?
I don't know that we
There's
can.
No bolts. There's
Correct.
no bolts on the outside of that plate.
That's correct. We can agree
Okay,
to that.
go down to the next photo, if you would, and that's the interior photo of where that eye bolt comes through.
Yep.
Okay, that is a channel beam that is a structural member. In the middle of it is a large circle, which would be the ending of that eye bolt, and it may have been welded at one time, or it may not have, but right now it's showing that it was, it may have had a nut on it at one time. But right now it's showing a huge amount of weldment around it, also anchoring it in. Can you see that? It was a nut, but that nut was also welded inside of it.
Yes.
That would make it extremely difficult to get that off. Now, if you zoom out a little bit, that C-beam is about 24 inches or so. I think that this could be supported better, safer, and cheaper by going to another C-member that was about 4 feet that would extend from the brick portion of the building, if you look at the outside, to the other brick portion of the building on the outside. And as far as the rest of it, the idea of that turnbuckle in the front, that had to be something that was added on at a later date, because that's sure, and I've got a minor degree in architecture, an associate's degree, but I've also got a degree in engineering, and I've worked in engineering for at least 26 years. That turnbuckle doesn't look like it could hold thousands of pounds of weight. If you zoom on that, it's just a basic standard turnbuckle that clearly looks like it was added later on. So I would think that that's not really holding up much. So that would then lead me to think that there isn't really a whole lot of load on that marquee. One of the ways you might be able to support that is to go underneath the marquee. I know there's a bunch of like ceiling panels up above, because I know it was open before, many years ago. But I think if you went underneath, you could lift those ceiling panels to inspect how it was attached without taking it off the building yet. And I would recommend doing all that before taking it off of the building. Do you follow what I mean? You may have to restore it. But I would much rather know that it was structurally intact now, because what I was told as far as the stress cracks on the top, those occurred when the marquee was first put up around 38 or 39, talking to all the oldies that I know. And as they attached that, it created stress in what I think was precast concrete. And if it was pulling out of that on that front view, you would definitely see the concrete bowing outwards, and you don't. So that's what I wanted to bring up to this.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Next with a hand raise is Dan Schrandt.
Hi, can you hear me, Patrick?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Dan. We know you're an Exeter resident. Go ahead.
63 J.D. Hill Ave in Exeter, New Hampshire. I want to thank the Historic District Commission for hearing my comments tonight. I've been a business owner in downtown Exeter for 29 years. I own the Water Street bookstore up the street. I also owned a building in downtown Exeter for 12 of those 29 years. And I served on Exeter's Economic Development Commission while I served on Exeter's Select Board for most of the 6 years I was on the Select Board. I have a reputation as someone who likes to streamline things so that business development can happen. I understand that the purview of the Historic District Commission is the historic streetscape of downtown Exeter and the surrounding area. The Ioka Marquee is a vital and critical historic resource and component of that historic streetscape. As a friend of mine said, that marquee on that building is like living in an Edward Hopper painting. I would ask the HDC to not grant any change to the July 16th decision until you as a body are assured by your own structural engineer of the Ioka sign's long-term integrity as a historic resource on the streetscape. I think we could trust JSN if the owners, and by the way, David and the other owners of the building that are developing it, thank you for redeveloping it. It's a great thing you're doing for Exeter. I think if you were committed to preserving this historic resource and component of the streetscape, I think that's when you take JSN's word on it. But I think you need to have your own structural engineer here just to confirm that the long-term integrity of this historic resource will remain in that place. Thank you for hearing me.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Next with a hand raise is Mareed Carr. Sorry, I mispronounced your name once again. We have heard from you before. Go ahead, please. State your name, residency, reason for speaking tonight.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mareed Carr. I live on Four Cross Road in Exeter. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, thank you. So again, my concern is that if the marquee is taken down, that it will stay down and not be taken up again, whether it very likely could be damaged. We haven't heard any evidence on whether or not removing it would damage it. And I think that should be determined before any decision is made, whether allowing it to be removed, whether any vote of that nature goes forth. The real concern is, I have heard before that the real way it's attached is on the inside of it, and that is what could damage removing the marquee. It's really damaging the marquee and not just the masonry, which also probably would be damaged removing it. If the marquee is removed, not just it could be damaged being removed, and it could also be damaged sitting in some storage location while the appeals go on, which could take quite a while to happen. And meanwhile, no work is being done to preserve the marquee. Right. While it's on the building, we can see it. We can know that it's safe. If any slight damage is done to it during construction, we can see that that it's there and that it can be fixed. I believe that scaffolding and a cover for it is a real possibility for it, because that scaffolding is going to be there at some point, and why not just put it up now? The fact that safety concerns weren't brought forward until it was the Historic Commission decided that the marquee should remain up, I find that to be also very telling and concerning. I have never as a Exeter resident for 31 years, I have never noticed a change in the IOCA's positioning or like how it is attached. I'm not an expert on that, but I've never noticed any changes in terms of how the IOCA is attached to the building or the pitch. I think the pitch is very likely intentional. I think that was addressed. So yes, those are some of my concerns, and I hope I'd like to see the marquee remain on the IOCA because it can always be fixed while it's up there. We don't know if it can be fixed yet if it's removed.
Okay. Thank you. Next from the public is Michelle. I don't have a last name. Can you please state your name, residency, and reason for speaking tonight?
I muted myself. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry about that. I'm a Dover resident. 20 years an Exeter resident. May I speak?
We'll have roll call to allow Michelle to speak. Michelle, can you state your last name, please?
Norton, Norton.
Okay, Michelle Norton. Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, guys. I'll be pretty brief. I'm a little concerned that on July 16th, when we had this HEC meeting, their concerns were the views that they would be able to sell from their apartments. And now the concern is the safety. I understand that they're putting a lot of money into this, and I want them to be successful. I want the mayor building to be successful. But I'm a little concerned about that. The return on investment, obviously we have to factor that in. My concern is when you take the marquee down, does that in fact change any kind of grandfathering that would happen when that has to go back up? So now the marquee will have to fit certain schematics or issues to go back onto the building that it wouldn't have to if it stays in place. I feel like with we can find a way to keep this in place and maintain its structure while still doing the development. And that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Next from the public is Elizabeth Rollins. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, just got the unmute. I'm Elizabeth Rollins. I live in Farmington right now. I grew up in the Exeter area, went to Exeter High School. I spoke at the last meeting, and I'm also a member, as Doug had mentioned, of the IOCA Marquee Preservation Committee.
Okay, just hold right there. Doug, may Elizabeth speak tonight?
Sorry, yes, of course.
Okay, Julie? Julie, you're on mute. We didn't hear your response. Still on mute, Julie.
I know my finger on the pad just doesn't always work, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to bring up that nobody seems to have touched upon is the if they are to take it down, and they're saying that they're going to keep it down through all this process of appeals, and it sounds like it might carry on for a while. How are they going to restore it back to the building if construction's already underway and partially completed? It seems to me like there's been no touching upon that whatsoever. And to me, that seems like it should be very important right now, because it sounds as though it's being based upon them not having to return it to the structure. The other point I want to Attorney Cutter Summers addressed a safety concern, requesting the removal of the marquee temporarily, stating that they wanted to eliminate a situation that may result in injury. She went on also to state that there would be a danger to the public if the marquee was not removed. Well, my question here is, has due diligence been done in the meantime of this litigiousness rather than just requesting the removal of the marquee to alleviate this issue? Have the builders and their attorneys approached the town, asked to put safety measures temporarily in place that comply with the decision of the HDC, which also states that it must remain intact? So even a caution sign, they haven't even attempted scaffolding or supports to my knowledge. It seems to me that if the marquee is truly an imminent danger to the public safety, even after sustaining tornado, hurricane force winds this week, that an immediate attempt to secure safety measures would be a paramount concern rather than waiting weeks in what's starting to appear to me as an attempt to circumvent a decision that's already been made. I can only speculate as to why I haven't seen any measures addressed at any of the meetings with any faction in the town and in compliance with the HDC's decision. I question the urgency that's being portrayed for the safety of public versus the insistency of the immediate removal of the marquee. Also, during that same select board meeting, documentation was presented from JSN Associates. Though I do not question their professionalism or integrity, I do question the methodology behind this. The goal of the builders doesn't seem to be safety rather than to find a loophole to permanently remove the marquee. Though JSN does have structural engineers, Jeffrey Narrock on his website just says he's a civil engineer, and they do have 2 certified structural engineers. And my question is, if this is a safety concern, why wait until August 4th to come up with another go around at this? And why couldn't one of the other engineers be here to answer questions in lieu of his absence? These, I feel, are some particularly important questions that should be addressed relative to the necessity, or actually lack thereof, in removing the marquee, especially considering, of their own admittance, JSN was not even called until after the first HDC meeting. The final thing I want to mention is to reiterate the ruling at the last HDC meeting that the marquee must remain on the building. JSN Associates themselves, in the letter, stated that it would take a significant amount of structural reinforcing to correct it, not that it was beyond repair. They also didn't say that removal was necessary to attend to this repair issue. I don't believe it unreasonable that a structure standing nearly a century would need some repair, maintenance, and structural support. When anyone purchases a building in a historic district, that purchase comes with great responsibility and obligations to that purchase. Obligations and responsibilities not just to preserving history and its icons, but to the community as well. The fact that they are looking into a non-local company to potentially restore it, to me, indicates their lack of interest in the community and helping out community members and bringing them in on the project. It seems like they still want to remain a separate entity. I also would like to remind opposition that those responsibilities, standards, and guidelines that have been set forth by the Historic Acts of 1935, the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966, the Secretary of the Interior, the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance, the Division of Historical Resources, as well as our own Historical District Commission. I'm asking if the removal is in line with these standards and guidelines, as well as their ideology. Especially when repair can be done in its place without removing the marquee. It's not just a practical thing according to the terminology used tonight. So my question also is the issue of practicality or safety. It seems to be getting convoluted in this whole ordeal. I don't see any ambiguity in the wording of which the HTC said, or any of those standards set forth by local, state, and federal governing agencies, nor do I see the necessity of clarification other than potentially attempting to circumvent this ruling once again, which you guys are trying to adhere to those standards. It seems to me the only ambiguous wording in all of this is the usage of temporary. So that's pretty much a lot, but those are my questions and concerns. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Next from the public is Sheila Mullen. Sheila, please state your name, your residency, and your reasons for speaking tonight. You're muted right now. If you want to unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead.
My name is Sheila Mullen. I live at 4 Cross Road in Exeter. I've been a resident for 33 years. I am speaking tonight because of the importance of maintaining the IOCA sign on the building and the marquee. So I don't think I have a lot to add to what Elizabeth had to say. She was very eloquent and covered so many points. I don't know if I have much to add, except that it seems very self-serving to have your own structural engineers looking at something that is in question. It also is very disturbing that the proceedings would go on and on and on in order to block the maintenance of the sign, and the cost of appeals could possibly pay for having the restoration. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Next is Dawn Jelly. Dawn, unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Dawn. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name's Dawn Jelly.
Dawn, you just dropped off for a minute. Say that again.
My name's Dawn Jelly, and I live on Nelson Drive in Exeter, New Hampshire.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I want to say thank you very much to the HDC for really considering this and to support their original decision to preserve the IOCA marquee in place. But I am highly concerned that if the marquee was removed, that it wouldn't go back up. And I'm concerned because the builders did buy an historic building, and I really appreciate their restoration efforts, but they did buy a building with an 80-year-old marquee and the associated history. I also feel like they've clearly said they don't want the marquee, and they'll go all the way to the Supreme Court not to make that happen, so they don't have to have it. So I think we should be extremely cautious. I do agree that there can be things put in place to secure both the safety of the people. I support what Dan Sherrod said, and also Elizabeth Rawlings. And I just feel like if there is a vote that you feel that the marquee has to be removed, then I would feel like we should have more safeguards. Like, if the proposal is that the funds to restore the marquee is by the public, and what happens if there is some damage or it gets destroyed while it's in custody? Who's paying for that? So I think there were the temporariness and all of what that entails, because I honestly do not feel, I trust somebody who says, I want to remove the sign and put it back, when really I'll go to the Supreme Court to not have it. It just does it. And I also wanted to agree that we need some more independent assessments and information. I feel like that needs to be where the truth is in all of what is safe and what needs to be done. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you, Dawn. Next up is Laurie Couture.
Oh, no. Hi, Patrick. Hi, Historic District Commission and everyone. We had some just wonderful comments. I'm so proud of every one of them. Clearly, there is... Laurie,
for due process, can you please state your name, your residency, and reason for speaking tonight?
I'm sorry. I'm Laurie Couture. I'm from Newmarket. I lived in Exeter for almost 20 years, but I spearheaded the efforts to save the marquee. May I speak?
Okay. Roll call, please. Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Laurie.
Yes, I just want to say I'm extremely proud of everybody who has stepped up for this crucial piece of our community, as Dan called it, streetscape. it is like an Edward Hopper painting. When you go into town, this is what makes it. But this is not what we're discussing tonight. We're discussing tonight that on the 16th of July, a ruling was made by the Historic District Commission that the marquee does need to stay on the building. And let me remind you that I submitted a letter from Portsmouth Sign, and I understand Sharon Cuddy Summers said that they are not going with Portsmouth Sign to restore the marquee, and that is concerning because, again, this is a company that we trust. They restored our community's Yoken sign just a few towns away, and they did such a phenomenal job that it looks like we step back into the 80s when you look at it. And so if they're not hiring local, you know, that concerns me too. However, Portsmouth Sign stated that they would be able to, if allowed and if hired, to restore the marquee on the building. Now, if a company that went so far as to restore the Yoken sign, which is far more complex, especially when it comes to neon timers and switches, if they could do that, I don't understand why another company could not. That would call into question that. And I agree with Dawn that all this money being spent on appeals and attorneys could be used to provide a beautiful restoration of this marquee. I spoke to Jared, who is in the process right now of restoring the Colonial marquee in Laconia. And as Michelle Norton said, the last meeting was all about views. Well, now they've got people lined up. Those apartments and condos haven't even been built yet. And they have people lined up for a marquee view apartment. So before it was views, now it's safety. We just had a tropical storm, like Beth said. That marquee hasn't moved a millimeter. That marquee has weathered 80 years of storms for the reason that Michael Mezlowski said. There is a C-beam there. There are other pieces to it that we can't see that people who know the history of the building have been able to speak to. I feel that it's crucial that the board stick to their original decision because Ms. Cuddy Summers has made it clear there is no intention of putting this marquee back on the building when it is removed. Their intention is to go all the way to do everything in their power to keep it off. Now, I asked David Cowie and Jay Caswell, why not be the heroes here, guys? I would love to sit down with you and have a one-to-one meeting, no attorneys, just us, tell you how much our community loves this feature. You guys have a gold mine here. You have one of the most phenomenal features in the Seacoast on your building. It's the only Ioka marquee in the entire country because it was the only Ioka theater. It doesn't matter that you're not a theater anymore. It's like a plaque. It's something to be proud of, to say, look what we have. And it goes perfectly with your speakeasy, with your retail space, and with the people you'll have upstairs. Now, you come from out of town. You're looking at it from a developer's point of view. And I've said, we want to support you. And in my committee, we've been pushing to support you. I'd be happy to give you my money. But I'm asking, please, rather than wasting money going all the way up to the Supreme Court, come on, please, talk to people. Learn how important this structure is, and maybe it'll become important to you too. But you guys, you have something awesome on your building. And we do not need to take it down to shore it up, to support it, to fix it, to protect it. We can put scaffolding under it. We can put support beams. We can put a wooden box around it. Don't tell me that all the amazing drawings that your architects did, that they can't find out a way to incorporate this marquee, and that your construction team that seems pretty top notch can't figure out a way to protect that marquee. I'm sorry. You know what? Maybe attorneys will win. But you know what? This town does not know what it's going to lose until it's too late. And I'm telling you that as somebody who lost my son. I've seen a million movies in my lifetime about what it's like to lose a child. It's never what you think. If a historical feature is removed, cast away, erased from our town, it's gone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. Next up in public comment is Linda F. Wade. Linda, go ahead. Please state your name, your residency, and reason for speaking.
Hello, my name is Linda F. Wade. I was born in Exeter and I lived there the majority of my 69 years. But for the last few, I have lived in Northampton, so I am living in Northampton now.
Okay. By roll call, is Linda allowed to speak tonight? Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak. I don't think I could do any better than everybody else who's already spoken, especially Laurie. But I'm wondering, do we have an itemized report on how the engineer determined that the Marquee is unpredictable and flimsily held to the building? I'm wondering when the last, well, he wouldn't be the last owner, but the owner who had restored it so beautifully to the vintage ice cream parlor movie theater, wouldn't there have been building inspector reports on how the Marquee was attached? Wouldn't he have had to apply for permits, and wouldn't have those had to be approved? I would think things like that would be available.
Linda, you dropped for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm not sure where I dropped off.
You had asked about the previous owner having building permits for restoration.
I was just wondering whether any of those records, though that would have had to have been approved, I would think, by the town building inspector. I'm not sure of the protocol, but I would think records like that are available on any work he would have done to the Marquee. I would think those would be available at the town. I'm not sure where. And I'm also wondering how unpredictable are any of the signs or accoutrements on all the other historic buildings in the town, since all of the buildings in the town are old. And will this set a new precedent in the town where anyone new coming in will be required to take these down and by law have them removed and redone to today's standards? I'm also wondering how the inspector, the engineer, was able to assess the safety. Was he able to get inside the building or up into the Marquee? How did he do the assessment? Thank you.
Okay. Next with a hand raised is John Mezlowski.
Oh, yeah. Not again.
Yes, my name is John Maslowski. I live in Prescott, Arizona. I'm a 29-year resident of Exeter, New Hampshire. I was born in 1947, graduated high school in 65, and left Exeter, New Hampshire and its surrounding communities back in 1976 with a tour of duty in the United States Army.
Okay. By roll call, Doug?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Grayson?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, the concern I have about this is I agree with a lot of everything everybody else has said. However, when you go to take the marquee off the building and something happens, which, as we know, we can't predict that, who pays for the rebuilding of the marquee? Or is it just cast aside and, used as a collateral damage for the historical renovation of the building? I'm a history buff. I loved what they did to the fire station that was once Al Farron's Western Auto, and I really cry when I see things that were destroyed. St. Michael's Church, the old courthouse, and various other places. And I just want to know who supports and who pays the bill if something like that damages or destroys the marquee. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. And I believe we have 3 more hands raised, 2 of which I believe we have heard from those people already. There's a third that is just a phone number. It's 603-512-8396. Bob and Exeter TV, can you vet this for us in terms of an internet connection? Is it Seacoast related, or is this something unrelated? Bob?
Well, they're in the right area code. The IP I'm getting, it just says US, so I don't have anything more specific than that, but they do have New Hampshire area code.
Okay. The phone number is 603-512-8396. Go ahead, please state your name and your residency and your reason for speaking tonight.
Hi, my name is Scott Ruffner. I am a local resident living in Exeter at 11 Hall Place. And I have a question concerning some different sort of angles that are coming in about the marquee being sort of a monumental historical piece, and then others on the HDC have pointed out that it's a resource for communication and letting the community know about events and different things happening in town. And so my question is, for the different people in the HDC, is where you're coming from a standpoint of, if the marquee is retained, what is your expectation that this marquee will continue to be used as a communication resource for the town of Exeter? And my question is, being someone that's involved in a lot of community events, this marquee has not been readily available for the past 5 years for community events. So is there an expectation that that will come back and that the new owner should be expected to work with the community? Or is the marquee in and of itself, even if blank, is that sort of serving a purpose as an artifact for the town?
Scott, I can answer that. There is no purview for us to require it to continue to remain as a communication piece to the community, and nor can we dictate what goes on the marquee or if it's lit. So that would be the short answer. It would be at the discretion of the current owners to put any copy on the marquee.
Okay, so I mean, I've definitely heard that, you know, one of the arguments for retaining it was that we would lose it as a resource, even though it has not been a resource. So, you know, is that something that can be pulled back as a reasoning for keeping it from the HDC?
No, I want to be clear. What we're talking about tonight is the decision that was made by the HTC on July 16th that the marquee is to remain. and not to be destroyed, that it was not historically appropriate to destroy it as a historic element, and it was to stay on the building. That's the clarification of that tonight is a request for a temporary removal to better evaluate the building and the sign and to restore it if they are not successful with their appeal to permanently remove the sign. That's what we're talking about tonight. If you could express comments directly to that, that would be helpful.
Thank you for the clarification. That was very good. Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
Okay. Next in public comment, we have Michelle as a hand raised again, Linda Wade as a hand raised again, and Myreed as a hand raised again. Before I call on you for a second time, I'd like to give an opportunity to the applicants for sir rebuttal of any of the public comments that have been made. Go ahead.
I think I'll just wait until all the public is done.
Okay. Then Michelle, you are next up for hand raised. We have heard from you already tonight, so go ahead. Exeter TV, can you allow Michelle to speak again?
Got it.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
All set. Thank you. Go ahead.
And this is a clarification thing. Has the town engineer been in to see this all, or is it only just the engineer that's been paid by the developers?
Our own building inspector, Douglas Eastman, was on site with the engineers during their last site walk and evaluation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Linda Wade. Go ahead.
I didn't actually realize I put my hand back up, but I'm just wondering, wouldn't it be fair to get another opinion on the safety of the marquee? And because we're not sure how it was even viewed to determine it was unsafe. And okay. And how can they, what can they tell us that proves it is unsafe and that it is unpredictable? Just as anything anywhere can be unpredictable, and the sign off of any building in downtown Exeter can be unpredictable, should we take down all the signs for safety's sake?
Okay. Thank you, Linda. Myreed? Thank you, Exeter TV, for keeping up with this. Myreed, go ahead.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So, Myreed Carr, and so the one thing I just wanted to say was I do believe that there should be an engineer that looks at whether the sign would be damaged if it is taken off before a decision is made, and to get that feedback. And also what the situation is. We haven't heard anything about how it's attached on the inside, and I think that should be heard before a decision is made as well. Yes. And one other thing I wanted to say was I looked at the website for the company that was mentioned to work on the sign, Bridge Road Sign Company in Newbury. I took a look at their work and the gallery that they have posted on their website, and they don't have any experience that I can see with anything similar to the IOCA. The only neon experience they seem to have is with simple bar signs, and there's no historical element or restoration element to their business, and they don't seem to have worked on any marquees at all before. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay. And also that the community is very willing and happy to raise money to help with the process of restoring it and scaffolding to keep it up, if that is a concern.
Okay, thank you very much. One more hand raised, two more hands raised now. Karen Weeks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Karen.
I'm Karen Weeks. I live at 7 Penn Lane in Exeter, New Hampshire. And
Thank you.
I just wanted to, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry. I just wanted to reiterate two things. One is that I'm wondering why Jeff was the one to come and why Sharon keeps calling him a structural engineer. From the website, which could be not up to date, it does say that he is a civil engineer and that he concentrates on bridges and roads and parking lots and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering why they didn't use one of the structural engineers at that same firm to do this, which makes me kind of wonder about the report. And the reason why I looked this up is because the report seemed very incomplete to me. It didn't, I feel like they could do some exploratory stuff to figure out how that's attached. And just focusing on that chain seems to be just one bit of a much bigger picture that we aren't getting. So I'm concerned that the board here is going to make a decision based on incomplete information. And as the others have said, perhaps even if they want to hire someone else or at least get a structural engineer out there to kind of do exploratory stuff, I'm sure you can get in there and figure out how it's attached without taking the whole thing off. And the other thing is once it's taken off, it's the way it's put on, its application would be not grandfathered anymore. So now you've taken it off and now you've got to do a new application. And it doesn't sound like they're going to be working on that while this is all an appeal. So the problem is how will they know the front of this building can retake this marquee if they aren't planning on ever putting it back up? So when they say they're going to take it down to do all that exploratory stuff and figure out how they can fix the sign and fix the front of the building, that's all great, but they don't mention that we also need to figure out how it's going to be reattached. And just these kinds of things that are left out leave a really bad taste in my mouth. And it could be just the way I'm interpreting it, but it just feels wrong and it feels a little slimy. So I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay. Laurie Couture.
Again.
Hi, I just wanted to add that Portsmouth Sign said that they could restore that marquee for approximately $25,000, and that they did the Oaken sign for $45,000. So money could be better spent with that. You could take a credit card out for that small amount of money rather than all the attorney fees. Thank you.
Okay. Last hand raised right now is Sheila Mullen. Sheila, go ahead. We've heard from you once already. Sheila, it's like, Sheila, go ahead. If you would like to have your hand raised, it seems to be going up and down. So go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just very disturbed that the committee made a decision and the information has not significantly changed since you made that decision. And I just request that you stick to your decision and that that scaffolding would be put up to be safe for safety for that area of the sidewalk anyway. And I feel like that would take care of the situation with the safety concern. So please stick to the decision that you made. Thank you.
Okay. And then another hand raised right now is Michael Mezlowski. Michael, we've heard from you already tonight, so go ahead, please.
I think we beat this horse.
Okay.
Could you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we beat this horse enough to make a decision.
All right. Thank you for that comment. I do have to allow everyone from the public that wants to speak if they are so deemed appropriate to speak by the commission. So I see no other hands raised at this time, so I'm going to open it up to back up to legal counsel and the applicants. Sharon, you did just mute yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I think Sharon may be waiting. Oh,
there we go.
She's back.
No, I wanted to let you know that Adam Wagner, the architect, wanted to speak. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Adam Wagner. I have three relatively simple points that I want to make in reaction to a lot of the commentary that we heard tonight. The first being the defense of JSN engineers. In New Hampshire, there's a lot of crossover between civil engineering and structural engineering. And I would put my professional reputation behind the fact that JSN is a very, very highly qualified structural engineering firm. We have done literally hundreds of millions of dollars of building construction with them. And everything from ground up construction to complicated renovation projects. But Jeff and his team are top notch. They absolutely know what they're doing, and they are qualified to make an analysis on a sign like this. So I want to make that point first. The second point I wanted to make was in relation to these parallels that a lot of the comments being made are in relation to the Yokin sign. And while we were sitting here, I did a little bit of research. And Seacoast Online published an article on April 16th of 2013, documenting the removal of the Yokin sign so that it could be renovated. They then had a follow-up article for when the sign was put back in place and a celebration of what had been restored there. That article came out May 12th of 2015, 2 years and 1 month from the time of the removal of the sign until it was put back in place, fully restored. Now, part of the reason why I bring this up is I think if you're going to restore a sign, as Mr. McCallum mentioned, you don't want to repair a car while it's still driving down the road. If the sign is to be restored, the proper way to do it is remove it from the building, restore it correctly, and return it to the building so that it can be securely fastened to the building the right way. Now, the last point I want to make is there were a lot of comments about, well, what happens? What happens if the sign gets taken down and the developer refuses to put it back up or it's damaged? The protection that the community has in this regard is the approval. The approval states right now that the end result of this construction project is a facade that looks like what we have presented to this board. And if we get to the end of the project and the facade doesn't look like that, then Mr. Eastman will not issue a certificate of occupancy for the building. Thereby, the developer has spent a whole bunch of money to improve a building and create residential units and finish it out, and they won't be able to put anybody in the building. So ultimately, the town of Exeter and Mr. Eastman hold the card to determine if we have satisfied the requirements of our approval. And it's in every bit of the developer's interest that if the approval doesn't change from what it states right now, to take care of that sign, restore it in a manner to make it look good again, and put it back on the building. So those were the 3 points that I wanted to make. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay. Thank you, Adam. I think at this point,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I just want to make a couple of follow-up points, namely that we just encourage the commission to grant us the relief that's been requested pursuant to the comments that were made earlier. And I also just want to note that a number of comments were made here tonight that seemingly kind of conflate the issues that are going to be discussed at the appeal level with the ZBA and what we are here doing tonight is exactly what the chairman stated earlier. We're simply talking about the temporary removal of the sign following on our request. I also just want to state publicly that it's important that everyone understand that we as developers don't leave our rights at the door to be able to select our own contractors, our own sign people, our own engineers, and also to pursue our appeal rights. I heard that over and over again tonight, and I just want to make it clear that we have the right to select our team and also to pursue appeal if that's needed. That said, I heard everything that the commission said earlier, and I would hope that you grant the temporary removal of this sign in a way which is going to protect the sign and yet be able to allow us to proceed in accordance with our letter. Thank you.
Okay. So a couple things that I wanted to raise. One is there's been public comment and other discussion about the need for a second opinion on this sign that is independent of others. So I'm going to ask if we as a commission to make a decision tonight feel that we need a second opinion to render a decision tonight. And I'm going to ask for that by roll call if you feel that that's necessary for yourself to be able to make a decision tonight. So Doug, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if I might interrupt there.
Sure.
I have to go by the state statutes. And state statutes allow for planning board to get a third-party opinion, which would be paid for by the applicant, actually, but I'm not looking for that in this case. But the HDC does not have that authority. So if we wanted to get another engineering opinion, we would have to pay for it. And I tell you, we don't have the budget for it. That being said, this project, this Marquee, follows the Demolition Review Committee guidelines under our zoning ordinance. And the Demolition Review Committee of the Heritage Commission has not been requested to have any input on this project, on this particular issue. The Heritage Commission can hire consultants such as a third-party engineer for this kind of review. Unfortunately, the next Heritage Commission meeting and the next zoning board meeting are on the same night. So I agree. I have to say, I agree that I would like to get another opinion. I think Attorney Summers will agree with me that sometimes it's how you ask the question. You get the answer that you want depending on how you ask the question. My husband's an attorney. He told me that. So if the commission is interested in that, we would have to inquire of the Heritage Commission. Would they be willing to spend their funds and do that job for us, I guess.
And for clarification, the Demolition Review Committee is a subcommittee of the Heritage Commission?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be the mechanism to be able to fund that third-party decision or third-party evaluation. Okay.
And that commission does have an interest in here. It's right in our zoning ordinance that this appurtenance, and it's over 50 years old, applies for a demolition review. And that hasn't been done. It hasn't been requested.
Right. And I did try to bring some clarification to this with Doug Eastman, our building inspector. And typically, as our zoning ordinance reads, that request for the Demolition Review Committee to actually review a demolition only happens once a demolition permit is applied for, as I understood from Mr. Eastman.
Or a building permit.
Or a building permit. Okay. So I don't believe that's happened. We have deemed that the demolition is non-appropriate, so that hasn't happened and therefore has not triggered a Demolition Review Committee review. So Julie, do you want to speak to that in terms of the flow chart of how that decision-making is supposed to happen or is currently happening?
Well, I haven't seen the building permit, but the application to the HDC proposed removal of that, of the marquee. And that does fall within the line of procedure, which if you read the full paragraph, which I'm trying to find about when demolition review is warranted, it includes whenever something is proposed, not when a permit is requested, but when a project proposes removal of something that's over 50 years old. So I disagree with Mr. Eastman just about every time.
Okay.
Where is that? I'm not reading. I have my zoning book right in front of me. Doesn't say anything about proposed.
Doug, we had this discussion with Dave Sharples.
Right.
It is in.
Yeah, I have it right here. It's procedure when an application for a demolition permit or a building permit involving demolition or a site plan review demolition is made, or a formal written application to request the demolition submitted to the code administrator for a determination under this article. So then I would advance that to the demolition review committee. There's nothing about proposed.
But an application was made.
An application for a demolition permit or a building permit?
For a historic district decision. And that, in that application is the proposed removal of the marquee.
Well, I think there was 2 opportunities at the other meetings that we had at the HDC meetings. I think there were 2 opportunities, and I thank you for bringing that up, that to bring it to the Heritage Commission prior to making any decisions. And I applaud you for making that, but unfortunately, you were not supported. And I think that would have been, I agree, I think that would have been the right thing to do, to make that a condition. We had opportunities, 2 of them, and they were voted down. I once again.
You weren't voted, they just weren't taken up.
Well, you suggested it a couple of times, and I wish the rest of the commission had listened to you and said, well, we need more information, and let's throw this to the Heritage Commission before we make any further decisions. And we could have done that, and I'm sure the applicant would have done that as well.
Okay, so that didn't happen. So let's cut to what we're talking about tonight, and a decision right now that's being asked or being made. What's on the table right now? Do we as commission members feel that we need a third party to evaluate the marquee before we can make a decision tonight about a change to our certificate of appropriateness? I'm going to ask for a roll call, and I'm also going to say that the mechanism that we're going to use to fund that would be through the Demolition Review Committee of the Heritage Commission if we deem that it's necessary for a decision tonight. So Douglas, by roll call, I will ask if you deem that necessary for your decision.
I'm ready to make a decision now. I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that the safety of the marquee is the germ of the issue. I think this is a matter of construction means and methods. It's part of the construction process. They want to take it down, restore it, and replace it. It's their project. I think that, it's my opinion that marquee and its supports would not meet current structural design codes, pretty obviously. In fact, I worry about walking underneath it, but that's neither here nor there. It seems like a red herring. Whether it's going to fall down now or 50 years from now, that's not the issue. The issue is how do they go about the business of remodeling and renovating this building, and I don't think it's our purview to get into that. I would ask for some kind of assurances that the contractors that are doing this work are bonded or insured, so that if there were damage, that it would cover the cost of repairing whatever damage was done. That's my opinion.
Okay. Julie, go ahead. Do you feel that it's necessary for you to render a decision tonight?
No.
Okay. Gwen?
This doesn't come easily. I guess I will say no.
Okay. Grayson?
No.
And Pam? Pam, you're on mute. Though we could read your lips. Still on mute, Pam.
There. No, I don't need any more information. I'm very happy with the JSN. I don't think you're ever going to find anyone better than them.
Okay, so no third-party evaluation is needed for a decision tonight. So then, with that, I'm gonna open up for any additional questions that commission members need to make a motion tonight or render a decision tonight.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for the applicant.
Sure.
Thank you. If the marquee, if you are granted that your wish to have the marquee taken down, and assuming that once it's down, construction on the building will continue as it has been, what will you be taking into account the applying of the marquee to the building as you are working on the facade, interior and exterior? It seems to me that it would make sense for you to assume that the marquee would be going up and that you would be putting whatever structures need to be put in place to make that possible and to make it as safe as can be when the marquee is finally reattached to the building. Is that your plan?
So David, Jay, or Sharon, would you like to respond to that?
This is David. I can respond.
Okay, go ahead.
That will all be part of the process. And as I said earlier, we definitely do not want to do things twice. So as we go through the process, the construction process, and depending what is happening with the appeal process, we will definitely be considering what it would take to reattach the marquee.
Okay. Gwen, does that satisfy your question? Okay. Any other commission members?
Patrick, I would just like to point out one thing, and this is more for the public, that when a project is going through an appeal process, if they proceed with the work, it's at their own risk. So we have a decision that we've made about retaining the marquee. If we don't change how that transpires, I guess is the word, whether it can be temporarily removed while we go through the appeal process. Just understand that if everything fails, it has to come back up. If the applicant does not prevail.
Yep. Okay. Any other commission members? Any other questions or clarifications needed? Okay. I don't have any other clarifications needed, but I do want to ask a very bold question of the applicant and the attorneys. Can we, I guess the only way to ask this is to ask pretty please, is there any way that we can forego an appeal process and by granting the temporary removal of the marquee for the purposes of restoring it to be replaced on the building and forego an appeal process? Sharon, you're on mute.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure my clients will tell me otherwise if I'm incorrect on this, but the answer very simply is no. We want to pursue the appeal process, but at the same time would also request that we receive permission to temporarily remove tonight. But I appreciate you for asking in an appropriate spirit and fashion, but the answer would be no.
Okay, had to try. So with that, I'm going to ask the commission members to bring forth a motion, and I think the options on the table in terms of the motions to be brought forth are a denial of the temporary removal and an upholding of the existing judgment so that the marquee is to remain in place. The second, a different motion or a opposing motion would be to grant the temporary removal of the marquee. If that's to come forward as a motion, I would say that the conditions applied to that should be, as Doug had requested, bonded and insured contractors working on the restoration and the removal of the marquee. And the second would be storing it off-site, enclosed in a secure location inside. Someone had mentioned that would be the best way to preserve it. So that's what I have as the two potential motions, and I will leave it to the commission members to bring forth a motion.
I'd like to make the second motion. I think that you said it much better than I could reconstruct it, but that would be my motion.
Okay. Do you want me to restate it?
Yes, please.
I do.
Okay. So the motion being brought forth by Doug is a motion of approval for the temporary removal of the marquee for the purposes of the restoration of the marquee by bonded and insured contractors, and is to be stored in a indoor location off-site.
Excellent.
With that motion, it does not counter our decision and allow the demolition of the marquee. It's only granting the temporary removal for the purposes of restoration.
And I would assume that a demolition permit wasn't necessary if it's not going to be demolished, it's going to be restored.
That's correct. So that is the conditional motion on the table.
Second.
Okay, Pam Jedham seconds the motion. So it would be a roll call as a vote. Doug?
Yes.
Julie Gilman?
Yes.
Gwen?
Yes.
Grayson?
Gwen, did you have some? Oh, sorry. Yes.
I actually did. I should have brought this up before you started to vote. You said in an off-site location. Initially, you had said also a secure location. Can that be added? I'm sorry.
It's too late.
Too late. That's what I thought. Sorry. I should have spoken up sooner.
So the motion as conditions right now are bonded and insured contractors to remove and repair the marquee or restore the marquee, and to be housed in an indoor offsite location. It does not include secure at the moment. Gwen, did you vote?
I said aye.
Okay. Grayson?
Yes.
And Pam?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes as a condition to allow the temporary removal of the marquee for the purposes of restoration by bonded and insured contractors to be stored in an off-site location indoors.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay. Thank you. With that would conclude the application of the public hearing for this project, and the decision, the certificate of appropriateness will be so amended.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I can add that it will be in a secure location.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, that as items on public hearings for tonight was the only one. This was called as a special meeting for that, so we have no other business for this commission or this board tonight. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All right, no need to vote for that. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Patrick.